good evening to all of you. And if you want Johnson to come, then I can go. Okay. And good evening to all of you, and it's a great evening. Such a big number, and maybe the reason appears to be, of course, a great CPD topic, and a very, very dynamic speaker, and maybe change our venue from Alphatem to this 4-star hotel. Maybe we all like hotel. So I think before I do introduction to speakers, one thing that I really want to thank all our office bearers who have been here, all our old staff, Johnson, Sajid, Paul, and Aslam, and also really a great thing that all of them, every CPD they are here and carrying this IAQ torch, and it's a great thing. And welcome to all of you who have recently passed MRICS, and in Dubai they said 3 things are very difficult. One is to get a driving license, to get a MRICS, and to convince your landlord not to increase your rent. At least one thing you have achieved, other things also will come. So, and for the mentors who are going to get the award, like Dinesh and all, again, it's a great thing that they, after getting their MRICS, they are coaching others, spending a lot of time, and that is what we all expect from all of you, the new MRICS, that once you, since you are all there now, so you need to help others. And so coming back to our speaker, my life story is a little bit connected to speaker. I think he also doesn't know. When I was small, I wanted to become Amitabh Bachchan, and then
I'm very short, huh? I'm short.
So then people told me my face, my voice, and my height is even worse than Amitabh's cook. So then I dropped that idea. Then I became big, and with great difficulty I became a QS then. And then I came to Dubai and joined one project in 1998. And then from that day onwards, I wanted to become Sampath Raman. That was the reason that because when I joined as a QS, and one of the senior QS was there on that site, and I asked him that I've heard there's something called MRICS, how to get that one. So he said, why are you asking me? He was not Indian national. He said, do you have an Indian in Dubai who is the MRICS? You better check with him. Then only that day I came to know there is a person called Sampath Raman who is the MRICS, and he was the first MRICS in Dubai whom I know. At least I don't know any other MRICS earlier than Sampath. So that's how he was a role model for all of us. And then my life story didn't end there. Then I did whatever exams and all. Then I went for RICS APC interview. And what I see as I enter RICS APC interview, Mr. Sampath, he is the chairman of the panel. I was like a role model, and then I see him right in front of me as a panel chairman. So that's what I'm saying. My life was not like leaving me from getting connected to him. So when you can imagine that how senior person he is, that 2007 and all, when we were all trying for RICS, he was acting as the chairman of the panel. So that's what shows the seniority. And then we all know that whenever we talk of Mace, the first name what comes is always Sampath Raman, and at one time I used to think that he is the owner of Mace, because I didn't know anybody other than him and Mace.
Don't put me in trouble, man. Coincidentally, my CEO from UK is here.
In between he went to India for 2 years, then only I realized that he doesn't own Mace. So Sampath Raman, he is such a senior person, and he has 25 years of experience in industry. Out of that, 15 years have been in Middle East. He has worked in Dubai, Bahrain, Oman, and his core specialization is in buildings, mixed-use developments, hotel, commercial field, other gas and oil. And his area of expertise include procurement strategy, procurement of large contracts, change management, risk management, claims management. And he is one of the very, very oldest, because I remember maybe I think about 15 years back, I have attended one seminar which was done by him. So with that kind of speaker and with that kind of topic, please give a big round of applause to him.
This introduction has put a lot of responsibility on me. I got really perform well today. It's interesting to see Dharmendra was in the RICS interview. Many, Regis Matthew was in the RICS interview. I met Regis Matthew there. It's been interesting. It's an interesting journey from. I did actually get my RICS membership in Singapore, and as soon as I got there, I just moved to Dubai. And then it was in the early stages for ACS APC. I was in the panel for the first ever interview, APC interview conducted in Dubai. That was for a senior professional route. Straight away, not even the normal APC route. Okay, the topic is very challenging. It demands quite a significant amount of time. But we have 1 hour, so we face a challenge. I think we'll just cruise, go forward with the various discussions of the topic and see whether we can make best efforts to finish in 1 hour. I know Mr. Johnson since 1987. So we did in Chennai the post-diploma in quantity together. So it's been a long time friendship, and we still get in touch with each other frequently. Okay, can we quickly jump to the? Is it audible?
Yes.
Too noisy.
No, it's
Quickly jump to the subject. Organization chart. You see the traditional route contractual link is employer, project manager, contractor, design consultant, cost consultant. And then you have domestic subcontractor, nominated subconsultant. I think it should be nominated subcontractor. Okay. Administrative link, because we're going to talk today, all the discussions we're going to have today is primarily aiming at the administrative process and procedures. I'm not going to talk about contract provisions, clause 51, clause 23. There are a lot of learned people here. I'm not going to stand competition to them. I'm going to primarily target on the process and procedures, more of administrative procedures, which will effectively enable every commercial manager handling a large project to manage the cost right from the beginning to the end of the project very effectively. It will have a link to the contractual requirements as per the contract of the main contract, or as per the service obligations of the consultants with the employer. It can't be completely devoid of that. It will, but if you are effectively managing this side, administratively you are very effective, then that side is going to be fantastic in terms of your administering the contract and getting to your final account. So this is the administrative link. You got an employer, project manager. Sometimes you would have in projects a design lead consultant managing everything. You may not have a project manager. A lead consultant would manage everything. You will have a cost consultant. You will be doing the so-called management of the project, so on and so forth, which is, I think you're all familiar with it. So these two diagrams would just keep in mind when you go through this session. And another important one is the project cycle. So this also, you please keep this in mind. So the whole discussions we're going to have will revolve around this project cycle. So hope all of you are familiar with this feasibility stage of project, concept design, schematic design, detailed design, procurement, construction, and close out. Of course, this is again, everybody is familiar. Time, quality, cost, most important parameters of project. So we're going to discuss about these four, while the heading of this CPD event says cost planning, change management, cost reports. I also chose to add one more, which is interconnected with this, which I thought would be very useful for all of us to touch base upon. That would be one of the important things which can link all this to effectively administer the project. So let's move on to the cost planning topic. Cost planning. It provides a systematic way of determining cost and confirming budgets. When we talk about systematic way of determining cost, the Let's go back to the project cycle, where we saw the feasibility, okay, concept, schematic, detailed design, procurement, construction, and close out. So the cost planning is done throughout the design stages. So we talk about feasibility, talk about concept stage, schematic design stage, and detailed design stage. Hope everybody is familiar with the design stages here, isn't it? We're not, all of you are familiar with the design stages. So the cost planning is done during every stage of the design. At the feasibility stage, at the concept design stage, schematic and detailed design. Let's quickly just have an example of a developer wants to go for a large project. On what he has got in his mind is only, I want to put a mixed use development. Could be 2 towers or medium rise or high rise. And let's say hotel, one component, office, one component, and a few bit of retail. So then he calls a cost consultant and says, can you give me some idea of what's going to cost? So what, as a cost consultant, if you're engaged by the developer, to give a very preliminary idea, it's a feasibility stage. So he's going to look at whether, how much it's going to cost, how much revenue he'll get out of selling or leasing or whatever. Is it going to make commercial sense for him, business sense for him to go for the project? So you're going to do that cost planning, which is also a cost planning at the feasibility stage. So what information you have at the feasibility stage is merely the areas. So you're going to say, I want to develop some 50,000 or 100,000 square meters. I want to put a hotel which is 50 guest rooms or 100 guest rooms. So you as a cost consultant say, 50 guest rooms, 100 guest rooms is going to be 35 square meters or 40 square meters, depending on the grade of the hotel, with a 3-star or 4-star, 5-star. So you're going to do the costing. This areas, hotel this much, 5-star hotel this much, guest room this much area, then the common areas, then the podium and retail and the office areas, office maybe shell and core, not finished. So you just need a very preliminary idea for you to do the costing. So this is the costing done at the feasibility stage, and that will give you a sort of a total cost of the project. Then you add some few development things, infrastructure, various things, whatever the cost. So that's feasibility. So to do a cost planning, we need all this basic information. So we discussed about this, whatever I told you at a feasibility stage, you're going to base your cost plan on the client brief. So what's client brief? The client says, this is what I'm intending to do. So an outline of it's going to be a 5-star hotel, it's going to be offices, grade A offices, grade B offices, whatever. So a very preliminary idea. So this is the overall elements required, and this will fit in to each stage of the design. Yeah, when you're doing cost plan. And this one is an audit trail. So when you are doing a cost plan, I haven't discussed about concept, scheme, stage, and details, and we'll just touch base upon that. But generally, you see, when you do a cost plan, you do an audit trail. Basically, you need to be very clear about what is the information you use to prepare a cost plan. But there's no meaning in it. You prepare a cost plan, what does it refer to? So during the feasibility stage, the client has given you only a brief. So the basis of the cost plan during feasibility stage is the client brief. But when you move to concept design, you appointed a design consultant. The design consultant has done based on the brief of the client. Now you want 100 guest room hotel, you want 30,000 square meters of office area. Fine. Then he gets an idea, is it a medium rise or high rise? He then prepares a preliminary concept. So the concept design is prepared. Maybe it takes 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on the project and complexity of the project. So the cost consultant is then, when he is appointed for this project, they say you did a cost plan during feasibility stage, and then we moved on to the concept. So we have some design information on the table. It shows the dimensions, very preliminary dimensions, shows the perspective. It shows what's going to be the type of facade. It's going to show what's the size of the very basic size of the lobbies and front of house areas, back of house areas of the building. So you got more information than a mere client brief. So if you're going to prepare a cost plan, at the end of the concept design stage, you're going to show clearly what drawings and specifications you use. Again, now when you're talking about concept stage, you won't even draft any specifications. So there the cost planner's skill. We're not merely estimating here. So we need to understand the difference between estimating and cost planning. The cost planning involves a lot of imagination. It involves the skill of the cost quantity surveyor in imagining. Yeah, if you're talking about a 5-star hotel, you need to have some idea about what the level of finishes are. Okay? And other project cost information you will be having with you to compute this. So there's more information available at the end of concept than at the feasibility, and you're going to make assumptions. Bear in mind, very minimum information, maximum assumptions. More information, less assumptions. So the cost plan is going to evolve from feasibility stage to the schematic and detailed design stage. More and more design information is available, less and less assumptions. So this is very important. A cost plan should contain a page in the cost plan document showing clearly what assumptions you've made. Another one is very important. What have you included? What have you excluded? Very important. Make sure that you're doing it, don't exclude too many things and say, oh, I this excluded, this excluded. What's the meaning of the cost plan then? So you need to be striking a balance between what are you including and what you're excluding. You can't exclude a facade and say, I've excluded the facade from the building. No, you can't. Probably the things strike to my mind is that you don't know all the information about the infrastructure, whether the DEWA substation or the drainage and water connections and it is a lot, whatever the telecommunication is available near to the project plot, or you need to draw in a line from an HV substation to make another substation near you. So there's a lot of things, like the electricity and water authority is going to ask you contribute to the substation. So have you taken those costs into account? So the assumptions are very, very important. Inclusions or exclusions are very important. You need to very unambiguously state what have you included, what have you excluded. Run date. What's run date? Date of which you're presenting the cost plan. It's very important. You're going to make several revisions to cost plan. You've got to very clearly identify when somebody looks at the document when it was produced. So it's 28th October, revision 0. Maybe another one is done 10th of November, revision 1. So you've got to have a clear idea about the run date. Then source of data used. What source of data used? What is drawing and specifications? The drawings is the information produced for the project. So you know something about the project. But you don't know many things at the concept stage because there are a lot of information which is not available for you to quantify, to cost. So if you can't quantify, what will you do? All of us are familiar, I think, with the RICS NRM, new rules of measurement. So it shows the elemental cost plan. The various elements, sub-elements, everything is there. We're not talking anything space design here. We're talking very, very simple logical things as set out by RICS, there is element. So you would be concept stage, you'll be doing an elemental costing. So you would have enough information to quantify, but what you will do is you would use other project data. Elemental cost per square meter of another project to arrive at this project cost. Okay, but having said that, you need to draw relevance. You should be using the data of a residential building of 10 story to a mixed use of 40 stories. It doesn't work. You have to be careful about what information you're using to arrive at this cost. Okay, so that's the source data I used. We can discuss, the topic is so elaborate, you can discuss the next 2 hours, significant time on the cost plan, but I don't have the luxury of the time, I need to move on. So as you move on to schematic design, you have more information, then automatically you have less assumption, then you will have less inclusion exclusions, run date definitely, source data used. You will move on from other project cost per square meter elemental data to more quantified information. If you quantified concrete, if you quantified approximately the steel, if you quantified approximately the facade, you know the outline spec, you will then get some market price per square meter, arrive at the cost, and then arrive at the elemental cost. Okay, moving on quickly to detailed design stage cost plan. Most of the detailed design stage cost plan, at the end of the detailed design or the mid-detailed design, you have complete design information. It's available. So it's fully quantifiable.
But there are a lot of seasoned Toastmasters in the
So who is the louder of both?
Maybe they are hearing you.
Creative and plant-driven imagination and exaggeration into our mind. So to our dear guests, remember, you are okay. Now before I hand over to the conference chair, I need
This is the
and I would like to recognize the seasoned Toastmasters who have basically
Okay. Well done. We continue, yeah?
You also have the document?
Is it gone?
Yeah.
I think it's still you can hear my voice.
Oh, yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. For the sake of that hassle, just forget it. So can any one of you tell at detailed design stage what is being produced when you finish detailed design?
Bill of quantity.
Yeah. So the cost plan is the bill of quantities priced. Okay. Yet when you're pricing the bill of quantities, still you would have some elements of design not done. Yeah. So you have to be very careful. When you've got a major portion of the design carried out to detailed design stage, you may not design a few things like landscape or security guard room, this, that, some few elements. I don't know, I can't just think about that. A few things which may not have been, have the main concentration. But as a cost planner, you need to pick everything. So the design information is the same logic. If you don't have information, you assume, state the assumptions. Yeah, there is some ancillary structure, some staff accommodation, part of the whole project. You've not designed it. Okay, go with the same logic. Take the square meter area, cost it with square meter rate, have a cost, add on to this cost. So the logic should be, the concept should be very clear. How you doing the cost plan here. I need to move on to the next topic. There's quite a bit to even discuss on the cost plan, but we'll see another opportunity. So this is another important thing. Some of you must have seen this, or many of you must have seen in the IAQS journal. I wrote one article about cost planning. This information is there. Cost planning process. You see where the value engineering is appearing, where the cost cutting is appearing, where the, an important thing in the cost plan process is confirming the budget. Yeah. Most of the cases, what happens, as I was describing to you, the feasibility stage. Yeah. Decision to invest. Okay. Now, just take an example. As a cost consultant, Johnson did a costing and delivered it to the client. And client found it, it's not feasible because it's costing this much and my revenue is going to be this. Sorry, I don't think we can go forward with this project. So what happens? No. Again, do a feasibility. So the feasibility may be changed. You change the hotel to something else or increase the hotel so you get more revenue, so on and so forth. decision team was yes, go to concept design. Okay, and design budget confirmed to architect. What happens in most of the projects? You at the feasibility stage, you have an outline budget. The developer has an outline budget. It goes to concept design, then that's where he verifies the costing again. Before it proceeds to further stages of design, the developer approves the budget. So that you've got a budget in hand to proceed to the next stage of design. As you know, in this part of the world, there are most of the developers don't even say what the budget is. Keep it, close to their heart. They say, oh, okay, you proceed, or challenge you with, it's costing 800 million. Oh, no, I want it for 600 to put you under pressure to make sure that there's no fat in the design. This also was in the IIQS journal. Okay, very simple understanding of the cost plan. As I told you before, early stages of the project, less information, more budget deviation. As you go forward on the design, more information, you get a more accurate budget. Okay, and there's one topic which we need to quickly touch before we move on to the next one, is the contingencies which you allow in cost plan. Early stages of design. Is it working now? No, it's not working.
Switch off here. Switched off.
No, it's not.
Switched
Sorry.
off.
Other one should work, no?
So contingencies is one of the important thing which a cost planner should remember. Early stages of the project, where the design is in early stages, there's more probability of design changing, less information, you have more budget deviation. So if you have more budget deviation, what would you do to allow for that? You have more contingencies, percentage. Depending on the project complexity and nature, you might even take 10%. Some projects are very complex, they even take 15% contingency. But the contingencies should drop down as the design progresses. You see simply here. You have more information about the design, then you would have less risks to the cost, thereby you drop the contingencies. You still would keep the contingencies at the time of award of the contract, construction contract, because still it has to go through the construction phase. You would have risks in the construction phase also. Design may not be perfect. There may be inadequacies in the design, so many things. So what does the cost plan contain? Front cover contains executive summary, project details, area schedules, instructions, assumptions, inclusions, exclusions, drawings, and documents. This is the standard cover sheet, I would say. You can use it for all the stages. The information in the document will vary depending on the stage of the design. So depending on the various roles the quantity surveyor plays, if you are working in a developer's organization, example, your role is to understand the cost plan, verify the correct documents were used for the cost plan, review the cost plan, agree the cost plan. So it's very important. This clearly shows how long, to what extent you would be doing the cost plan. I'm running out of time. I just need to very, very quickly go through this. Package management is an essential management tool for information management, procurement management, cost management reporting. It's very simple. I'll just describe it quickly and move on to the next topic. It's allocating a number or a code to all the contracts which you plan to procure and administer. At the beginning of the contract, beginning of the project, you would have a strategy. You will have a procurement strategy. Just an example, you can appoint one single design consultant, ask him to take the entire responsibility of architectural design, structural design, MEP design, landscape design, everything. That's one strategy. The other strategy is, okay, you advise the client in various circumstances, we go for only the architectural consultant separately, structural consultant separate, MEP consultant separate, landscape consultant separate. It's again a procurement strategy. So if you're a project manager or a cost consultant, or if you're not engaging anybody, you're a developer procuring all this yourselves, you're a developer's commercial manager or a contracts manager responsible for this procurement of consultants. It varies, isn't it? You will have to do only one procurement of all the consultants under one umbrella and then say everything is yours. You call them as a lead consultant, lead design consultant, whatever. If the strategy is to procure the consultants separately, then you have to make separate procurement. You have to prepare a tender document, float a tender, send RFPs, invite fee proposal, finalize for the consultants. Similarly, for the construction contract, depending on the procurement strategy, whether you will have one main construction contract or a main contract plus landscape construction contract separately. Maybe sometimes you have structural works in the project, you procure a separate contractor. Then so on and so forth. The topic goes on endlessly. It's a very huge topic we're talking about, is whether you're nominating a contractor, domestic supplier, nominated supplier. All of us are very familiar with this. All this comes to procuring, administering, closing an account. So the very good administrative way of doing it is packaging it. So that's what we call as package management. So this is what I was saying. Package management is evolved from the initial procurement strategy. You need to have the strategy clear at the beginning. What are you going to do? You can't have any, start the project with no idea. I may do one consultant, I may do 5 consultants. Can't. You have to sit and discuss, agree with the developer. How are you going to do this? Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a further idea of how the whole thing works. It's basically managing, we're all talking about managing the cost. So the managing the cost, as this package management has got a bearing on the managing the cost. So you're going to manage the cost in these 6 distinct sections. There may be a few others, but generally this is the major topics. Client. So your developer is going to have a cost. Okay. Now whether you're managing as a cost consultant or you're as a design consultant having cost consultant role, does not matter. Developer will have a cost. So that needs to be monitored. Then I was talking about consultants, whether you're having a lead consultant or 5 consultants or all that kind of strategy. Okay. Then we got project administration. We're talking here about these, site offices, procuring computers, procuring various administrative things. Okay, for the project. Then works, everybody is familiar about the works, construction contracts. Authorities, you monitor the cost of the fees payable to authorities. It's again a big topic. All are familiar with dealing with RTA and various authorities, the cost sharing. This is a very familiar topic these days in any development you do. And the fee payable for building permits, NOCs, and so on and so forth. So it's a very sensible thing to pick up the cost, not hitting. So you're able to see that these distinct sections. There is one more section which you can always have, is the contingencies. But again, it's a topic. It can be managed within those areas or can be identified separately. It goes into very detailed discussion how you're managing contingencies, but just to open one topic, say you can have one other section contingencies and have a package codes for that. This is the one. I would just, that's about package management. There is quite a lot to talk and discuss about package management, know more intricately how that's being organized. The package management itself is strategy, how to allocate the package numbers and things. And I think many of you will be familiar with the softwares, construction, financial, administration softwares in the market, available in the market. PM Web or PC Web, Econex, Conject, and there could be some custom softwares used by many contracting companies and project managers. Those are all very effectively work. They work effectively if you have a good package management system. Those are softwares which manage things, but if your input is wrong, if your input is not correct, if you don't do your strategy correctly, they're not going to help you. So it's very important, no matter what software you use, but if you got the principles right, you can even do it in Excel. Simple as that. It will be time consuming, but it doesn't matter. If are you clear with the principles? Very important. We move on to change management. Many of you might have heard, are more familiar, or this region is very popular with this heading called variations. Construction contract or what the consultancy contract, whichever you administer. This is change management. Okay. How do you administer the variations? Not contractually, administratively. We're not talking about contractual process here, but there is a link. If you don't have a provision in the contract, you can't do something administratively. You need to make provisions in the contract, but this is focusing on administration of the project. Change management provides knowledge of the implications, provides the employer with the ability to accept and approve changes, maintains an auditable trail of changes to the budget, I'll go back. Okay. Objectives of change management: provide advance warning of potential costs, provide estimates for cost advice for the change, procedure to enable key objectives to be achieved. We saw that time, cost, quality. Most of you, or all of you, would have heard about provisions for variations in the construction contracts. We'll be describing on what, if the contractor believes the change, you raise a notice for variation and encloses some reference documents, or this is in my contract, this is not in my contract, we made this variation. And as a quantity surveyor, you're evaluating the impact of the variation. Impact is on time, it's on cost, quality. So you'll be evaluating a variation from time, quality, and cost perspective. Okay, it very simply says that, okay, there is a provision to vary the contract, vary the works in the contract. There is a provision to show in the contract who is doing this. FIDIC contract, say engineer is responsible. Engineer is assisted by the QS. So that's all it says. And also you're familiar about how the variations are agreed. If it's in the same item as in the bill of quantities, same rate, and value, how to value the variations. I think all of you are familiar, right? Yes. How to value variations. We're not discussing much about that. But in order for the system to effectively work, if you are from a developer's point of view, if you are a commercial manager and developer's organization, you would want to control the whole thing, isn't it? You would want to have a budget based on a good cost plan, and you want to award a contract through a proper procurement strategy, and you want to administer the cost from the budget, what you awarded, and how the changes are happening. You want to track the changes, make sure that your top management is informed or advised of where the project is heading to in terms of cost. And also there is the implication of time, where the project is heading to in terms of time. Of course, there's a big analysis of the program. We're not getting to that. If you are a commercial manager of a project management organization or a cost consultant, you are all involved every one of the parties into the project development is involved with variations at some level of responsibility. So we're going to talk about administrative method of handling the changes. So variation is talking about change management here. So I think I should go through this change management flow chart. That will give you a better idea. Is it legible? Is it possible? Is it readable? Yeah. Okay. So let's assume, let's take an example of a contract, a construction contract awarded. The change management procedure is same whether we are administering a consultant's contract or a construction contract. It doesn't change. Procedure is same. It's administrative procedure is same. The magnitude of the cost is different. You're talking about a few hundred thousands in a consultant's contract. We're talking about several million in a construction contract. Okay. If a contract, let's assume the example of contractor's construction contract. Okay. I'm just trying to describe various scenarios for the benefit of everybody here. I'm talking about developers. You're a developer. I'm talking about you're a project manager. You're a quantity surveyor. Some of you may be working with contractors. So let's take an example of construction contract. You are a contractor's commercial manager. So you're identifying a change. So as a project manager, I've set out some procedure in the construction contract, how you go through administrative procedure to handle the changes. So if you're a commercial manager, a contractor's organization, you identify a change to your lump sum contract, then what you do is, you identify the change, and you raise a request for change. Yeah. Don't get bogged down with what is RFC, what is KFC. It's all the name given to, for various documentation views. You can call it anything. But what we very importantly interested is the principles behind it. So request for change is raised. Okay. See here, by employer, consultants, or contractor. Anybody can raise a change. Yeah. So, for example, the contract is awarded. The design is developed. There's a construction drawing being issued by the consultant. And he notices that he hasn't indicated the doors for some areas. He hasn't indicated anything. He just left it by mistake. The design, construction drawing is being prepared. So he notices the doors are not there. So he incorporates the doors, adds those doors in the schedule of doors and windows, issues the construction drawing. So he is very conscious that when he does that, he added these doors. So he should not be waiting. If you are a design consultant producing the construction drawing, first of all, you shouldn't have left out anything when you completed your detailed design. Yeah. You're expected to finish everything in a detailed design. But let's assume that it's being missed. So what he does, if the drawings are issued to the contractor, he's going to come back and say, give me a variation. These doors are not there in the contract, now it's added. So do you wait for contractor? One way is to just issue it, wait for contractor to come back to you, say, ask for the variation. The other method is, if you know very well, why do you wait for contractor to come back? So you raise the change, so the consultant can raise the change, explain the reason why these doors are added. I'm taking a very simple example. There could be very complex situations or variations. Yeah. And all of you would have come across that. So the request to change document is raised. Okay, stating the reason for the change. Okay. It's important. There could be several reasons. Okay, design development. This is something a design deficiency. You have not designed it fully. Okay, sometimes it could be an employer requirement. The employer would have asked, no, I don't want this quality door. Get me a different quality door. Okay, or change the finish of the door in certain areas of the project building. So he makes the changes. So the reason for the change could be design, could be employer requirement. Okay, there could be some requirements not door example, some other examples where you say where you need something based on the site requirement. Okay. Depending on site conditions, you may have to make some changes because what you assume during the design on what conditions the site is slightly different. So there are several reasons for the change. So when you go through the change management process, state the reason for the change clearly. Also bear in mind, anybody can raise the change. Employer, contractor, consultant. And I give you an example. Okay. And when the changes, these can be raised. Okay. And then RFC is sign off, it goes to project manager if there's a project manager. If the lead consultant is managing everything, it goes to lead consultant. Ironically, if you see the lead consultant himself has missed something in the design and he raises the change, it has to go to employer. From that, he has to write this RFC and send it to employer for his approval. Okay. In principle, if the change is accepted, okay, that could be, all of you know very well, I don't want to dwell into that discussion. There are very complex situations where contractor comes and say it's a variation and you argue it's not a variation. Correct? We will not go into that example, it will take time. So in those cases, when the contractor raises an RFC, it's rejected. No, it's not a change. See the specification, it says, or the design description says, all the areas in this particular, the lobby, okay, should be provided with this particular type of door. Whether it's mentioned in the drawing or not. Somewhere it will be mentioned in specification or some notes. So if you get that, you're supposed to allow for all the doors in your contract. I'm going to pay you. No matter whether it's shown in the drawing or not. These are arguments and could be very complex. Okay, let's not go. There could be situations where the change request is rejected. Some situations contractor disputes it, you reject it. It remains as a disputed variation. Okay. So all this is tracked through the change management process. But the moment the change is recognized as it is required, okay, it goes to two levels of assessment. Okay. Now let's assume that as a cost consultant, the change is first of all identified. The employer says yes, it's changed. Okay, let's pursue this change. So the cost consultant prepares an estimate of what it will cost and indicates to the employer, yes, Mr. Employer, this is a change and this is going to cost you this much approximately, and it's going to cost you a delay in the program by approximately 10 days, 15 days, 20 days. This is called initial assessment. Yeah. So the initial assessment of the change management contains the cost impact, time impact, and also it describes clearly to the employer why this is a change. So just be very clear. Okay. So the employer looks at the document, he sees, okay, the reason for change is explained. The cost approximately is some calculations are done. And then there is an approximate assessment of time. Practical situations, there are a lot of instances where you can't assess the time impact so precisely. You add 5 doors, what is the time impact? It's very difficult. You can't say, oh, it's 1 week. Anybody can argue the toss, but it's not 1 week. So you can say to the contractor, we missed the 5 doors, but you're not going to install these doors separately. You're going to order the doors for all the entire project. You're going to install it together. So there's no time impact. Be the situation. There's no time impact. It's only a cost impact. So an initial assessment of the change happens at this point when the change is identified and in principle it's accepted. Okay. Important thing here. We discussed about the nature of changes. Let's take one example. The employer wants the entire lobby area changed from a tile to an expensive marble. The client representative, senior guy visits and then you all accompany. Oh, it doesn't look great, for the lobby, or let's change it to marble. Let me go for this type of marble, that type of marble. The architect suggests something, okay? They decided to change it. Now, as a quantity surveyor, cost consultant, you're preparing this assessment, you're going to assess the change from a tile to marble for the lobby. And then the architect, the design consultant gives you an assessment of what type of model you want to go for. So you got some information about the spec, you got information about what is the change, and you know from the drawing what is the quantum. Is it 500 square meters, 2000 square meters? You know the drawing, you can assess. So the employer is able to see the cost impact due to the change. So the employer looks at, oh, I wanted a change, but it's costing 2 million, I don't want it. If it's costing 2 million dirhams, I already have a constraint of the budget, already the project is not returning good financial returns, I would compromise. Let me go with only tile. This is the time he takes a decision. You see here, sign off, rejected, stop. Don't go forward. So the employee is provided in a change management process, the employee is provided an opportunity with an initial assessment of cost, time, impact due to the change, no matter who created the change. We talked enough, we had enough examples for that. Stops here. Now, if the employer agrees, okay, 2 million dirhams, yes, we need it because we missed it before. Tile looks ugly, it doesn't look great. We certainly need a marble finish for the front of house lobby. Yes, justified. Sign off. He signs a 2 million. That's the initial assessment. Now your change is approved by the client. The next step you do is now you instruct the contractor. Now I'm going to link this to the construction contract. There's a variation, there's an instruction. FIDIC contract talks about engineer's instruction, right? So there's an engineer's instruction, but before you get to the engineer's instruction, remember, you have to follow this process. Effectively manage the cost. If you don't do that, oh, there's a change, okay, issue an instruction, what happens? Oh, anyhow, the client wanted it, no matter what it's going to cost, what time impact. Client wanted change from tile to marble. Kaliwali, you just issue it. That's one way of doing it, but that's not management. But it fits the contract, right? Where does it show in the construction contract that the assessment to be done, the employer needs to be aware of the cost and time? No, it doesn't say. If there's a variation, you have to instruct a variation in writing. It should be an engineer's instruction. So if the engineer gives an instruction, no matter whether this process is followed, it's a change. The contractor will go and procure marble instead of tile. Correct? But what we are going through here is a change management process. Now you would appreciate what is the implication of that. How does it help the project? This helps to track the cost. So where there is a cost implication, the employer is made aware of the cost implication at the early stage of before you instruct the change, and he has got the ability to make a decision whether he wants or he doesn't want. Correct? So that's what it is. We are talking about change management here. And there's one more step. You issue the engineer's instruction. Now I again go back to the construction contract, link this to construction contract. What was the provision? We talked about valuing variations. Yeah, there are two A, B, C, D, or let's not dwell on that. There are provisions to value the variation. If it's the same item in the contract, you will use the same bill of quantities rate. Now we're talking about tile to marble. That marble is a very special marble. Now you've got to evaluate this in first principles of costing. Contractor would have priced the 10%, 12% for valuing variations, apply the 12%. Omit the tile, add the marble. It's all QS's role. We all know how to value the variations. So I'm not getting to that. But after you issue the engineer's instruction, this process starts. Agreeing to the final cost. So effectively in the change management, we are talking about two distinct stages of managing the cost. One is assessment, initial assessment of the cost at this stage. Yeah? And final assessment of cost at this stage. Okay? So the overall change management entails two distinct stages, initial assessment, final assessment. So final assessment is agreed variation cost, which you are all familiar. In any construction contract, you agree to variation, contractor signs, client approves. Many of you have come across a lot of pending variations. That's very familiar in this part of the world, but this is a recipe for effective management of the changes. Okay. Now I'm not talking here about any software. You can do this in Excel also, initial assessment, final assessment. But there are financial management softwares which I have used since Bowie's days from 1999. I know how effectively they work. They are very effective tools for us to manage changes. Now, we all talked about example of 1 and 2 changes. And all of you know very well in large projects, you come across several hundred changes or several thousand. So when it comes to that size of number of changes, yeah, it could be costing 100 dirhams or 1,000 dirhams, could be costing millions. But the process is same, procedure is same. But if you got a log of everything, where you got initial assessment, instruction issued, tracking when these final costs have been agreed, is all allowing you to effectively, enabling you to effectively manage the cost. Okay, so we discussed about cost planning, how you systematically do the cost plan, which will then enable you to arrive at a proper budget. Then you award a construction contract, managing the changes to the contract. Okay, now if you've done all this, okay, it's good time management, 10 minutes. If you've done all that, it's going to lead you to a very good cost reporting. If you don't have a good budget, a proper budget, it's difficult to award a contract. Within the budget may have a lot of problems. If you've got a contract, but you've got a good change management system, you're going to track the changes, what happened from the day you awarded the contract with all the changes, where the cost is heading to in the project. All these are aimed at one thing, reporting the cost as a snapshot at any given point of time. If you are effectively managing the system in the cost, you should press on the button, you should be able to say where you are heading to in the project in terms of cost. There is one thing which we didn't talk about, what's talking. See here. It says disputed item of opinion. It's a dispute. So you reject the change, but the contractor says, yes, you may reject it, but I still have the rights. You will write back another letter to you. Okay, we received your letter that rejecting the change. However, we will maintain our position. This is the variation. Because he doesn't want to lose the position of the contract. So he would say it's a variation. So it's a disputed issue. Okay. Now you need to allow something. If you are wisely managing a cost, you don't know that could be a variation, or maybe a rejected item, and contractor would want to forego later. But today, based on your knowledge of the project and the contract, you see there is a possibility that it could be a variation. So what would you do? You are to pick up these items and park it as a disputed item, and then you also tell the developer early warning. So we are having change management where the changes are approved or proceeding in this. Some changes are rejected, contractor wants to maintain a position that it is a variation. You have to allow some money in your cost management system to allow for this risk. Else what will happen, you will all do the system, end of the day you will say, sir, this is the outturn cost, and press the button and they say there is a lot of disputed items you not picked up. So contractor's final account will come. You will be saying my projections as per this is 800 million. Contractor will submit a final account of 1.2 billion. So somebody, if you are a cost consultant managing a project, developers, what nonsense you been doing here? You say I am using this system, that system. What's this? He is saying 400 million more. Where does this arise? So there will be a lot of things coming up in the early mornings. You need to be very careful about parking monies, proper monies in the early mornings. This also involves one more point. Potentially in a project when going forward, you would have delays. Don't say any project hasn't got any delays. Delays are there. It will be very, very complex situation, multiple delays, client cost delays, contractor cost delays, combination of both. It's a ocean, it's a big topic. But as a cost consultant or a commercial manager, whichever party you are representing, if you are managing the cost, you also need to make an assessment of the potential cost due to delays. That also gets parked in the early mornings. Else you're not picking all the items in managing the cost, isn't it? There could be under 200 million claim by contractor. So you not picked up anything, you're just telling the developer, yeah, this is the cost. So you also need to be careful, but early warnings picks up all this, disputed variations, okay, any delays, any cost arising out of delays. It's only a probability, it's not a mature thing. If you have got a clear evaluation of delays, you will raise a variation for extension of time and cost. It will be signed off as a variation to the contract. There will be new duration, project duration, there will be new cost. But there may be practical situations. Any one of you have come across with time extensions sorted out at every suitable intervals in the project where the time delays occur. Can anybody raise your hand on that? We went through a project where the third month there's a delay, fourth month we sorted out, we got an extension of time and cost. I don't think anybody raises. So if you got that, then you got a finality of the cost. You go through this, yeah? If you got that idea, you go through this process. Yeah? In many cases it doesn't happen. So you need to take care of this. Very, very important. Initial assessment of the change. Again, these are the guidelines. Clearly identify the change. Date required for return in order to maintain program. Reason, we discussed about it. Responsibility for the change. Program impact, cost impact, budget effect. I might want to just touch base upon this. Okay. This is linked to contingencies. Contract, for example, we got a contract awarded at 800 million. And the client assumed, nobody gives contingency. Let's assume the client has allocated a contingency of 100 million for variations. Possible, design and construction contingency. When you come across a variation, you also need to assess where this additional money will come from. If you've got a contingency, which you allowed for design creep and construction creep, with the delays and something not fully designed, you can always take the money from the contingency for this variation. Yeah? So it's very important when you projecting a variation to a client, change to a client, you should also be telling that all the reasons is fine, yes, fine, how it is funded. Okay? My experience, I have come across many clients here, nobody gives any contingency. He says, you plead. Whenever there is a variation, come and request me that's a variation, we will look into it and we approve. We will not tell you what contingency we have as a developer. They think always if you tell the contingency, you will always go back and claim as a variation. The contractor will know, there is a contingency, or somehow he comes to know there is a contingency of 100 million. So the contractor will plan, anyhow, I want to end up with this, consuming this 100 million. Okay, so that's the reason. The client has got valid reason not to diverge the contingency. But if you see very professional cost management, I've come across, I worked in Singapore, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, where Bovis Lendlease and Jacobs managed the project. They were very professional, it's a pharmaceutical project. The client, Pfizer, agreed for the budget and also they allocated the contingency. So you have to tell them that you're taking the money from this contingency. One example of budget effect, I can give you an example. The developer decides, during the progress of the construction, decides to add 2 floors to the tower or 2 floors to the building. He thinks that he got a better feasibility now, considering the current market conditions, to add another 30 guest rooms. So he worked out, he just checked his feasibility, if I add 30 guest rooms now, I'll get this much revenue, things will be better, there's a demand in this location for a 5-star hotel. Then he says, I want to go for this change. Okay. Tell me whether that change is picked up in the contingency? It's not, because he's changing the scope. He's adding the scope of the project. So where the money will come from? So he has to increase the budget. So that's why when you raise the change request, even those 2 floors added will also be running through this change management. Yeah, just run through this change management. But here, as a quantity surveyor, you will say where the money is coming from. Mr. Client, you added 2 floors. It is not in the scope, project scope. My cost plan doesn't allow for this. Yeah. So you have to give additional budget. So maybe it's 30 million, 40 million. So he has to increase the budget. So the request for change, the AR of initial assessment addresses that aspect also. Otherwise, what will happen? You will add 2 floors, you will take from contingency. Contingency is gone. Nothing is there. The pot is empty. And then the client says, "Oh, I gave you the money, you spent it." So it's not. So you have to be very careful. Say, Mr. Client, as a quantity surveyor, I'm supposed to provide the cost management, advice to you. You are adding 2 floors. This money doesn't come from that pot. It has to be given by you because you are getting revenue, right? As a developer, he's going to get revenue. So if his revenue increases, he's going to increase the budget. So it's very important. This is what it is. New budget, increased scope. Contingency fund, we discussed. There's one thing which I have not discussed is transfers. How do I say this to you? Explain to you. One contract is awarded for main construction. Okay? Let's take an example, the landscape contract. We decided, based on initial procurement strategy, to award a separate contract for landscape. Okay? Talk about the strategy. So construction is happening. We got the landscape design. Normally they don't do it so early, they just take a bit of time to do the landscape design. Design was completed, maybe 18 months down the construction of the main contract. So the employer says, why should I go and buy another separate contract? Let's call the main contractor and ask him, you take this under you. You don't want to have the hassle of procuring another contractor. Everything will be under your umbrella. Take it. So there is a cost given by main contractor, you look at it, you agree. In your cost plan, when you identified the costing, you had allocated a separate cost for landscape. But when you procure the main construction contract, you didn't procure the landscape. So the money is available in a different package. So I'm linking this to package. So we talked about several packages. The landscape is a separate package where you got the money. Now your procurement strategy is changing. You want to take the money from there and give it to the main contractor. Again, it goes through the variation process. Change management. It's a variation to the main construction contract, instructing him to carry out the landscape works. Okay? Now, where the money comes from, it comes from another package where you got a budget allocated for it. So that's where you get this. So there, then what you need to do is you need to transfer the money from that package to the main construction contract, and you need to inform the client this funding for this variation comes from there. Otherwise, again you will have a problem. You take the money from contingency is gone. So you've got to have a clear idea when you're managing cost about a new budget, a transfer, and a contingency. Again, we're not talking about which software you use, whether you do Excel, anything, it doesn't matter. Principles here. Very important is the principle. You know the administrative procedure, you know how to handle this. The principles are very clear, the concept is clear, you are the key. No matter whether you do in Excel or you do, it's like a grocery shop. The guy doesn't have a calculator, but he knows 20 items you buy and he just adds up and tells you this much money. Whereas we people or people working in the bank, you go and draw cash in the bank, 50 plus 50 you will add calculator. Say 100, okay. So again, going back to principles, you be clear on the principles. Whichever software you use, whichever thing you use, doesn't matter. This is something which is more administrative in nature. This is something which I want to touch base. We're just running fast. You guys can spend another 10 minutes? Yeah. I'll just quickly, I'll skip this. I don't think we need to go into this. This is simply explains cost planning and change management. When the change management kicks in, we'll go into the cost reporting now. Cost reporting, objectives of cost report, commercial feedback for the employer, provide realistic outcome cost at a fixed time. So we discussed about cost planning, we discussed about change management, we discussed about package management, all that. It's all leading to this. If you don't manage all those things properly, you won't get this properly. Okay. Recognizes cost of unresolved issues, which is the early warnings, disputed items. Highlights employers' actions, cash flow advice, future procurement issues. If you all of you to come across in projects, it's quite customary for the cost consultant, project manager, or design, whichever role design consultant undertakes to manage cost, produces a cost report every month. It contains a lot of written, subjects into that, stuff into that. Oh, client made this many changes, this happened, that happened. So many. You can use all your English vocabulary skills in that. But the most important thing in a cost report is the numbers. Yeah. So if you're effectively representing to the client how the numbers are moved from the beginning to the end, I don't think you need to have too much written documentation in the cost report. That's the one single important page which, if I'm a client, I would look at. I won't bother about all this. Straight I'll go to the cost report and see where you started and where you are today. That's it. So, though the cost report is a big document, the important document in that is the cost report itself. Components of a project, 4 different components within a large project. And you can see the report. Yeah? Okay, we talked about cost planning, budget. Let's come to this. Initial budget, changes, in this instance there are no changes, approved budget, contract value, okay, agreed value. These are the variations, yeah? These are variations, okay? When you awarded the contract, this is the value you committed. When you have these variations, this is where you stand with the variations. See the early warnings, we discussed early warnings. Yeah, these are very simple example. I'm just showing a very simple example. There's some potential variation which is disputed, so there's a, yeah. And then early warnings, contingencies, forecast cost, and this is payment certified, variance. The variance here is between this and this. So you got an approved budget, okay, and you're forecasting a cost as of date where you're heading to. Okay, so if I'm a developer, I'll go through this report, very high level report. 4 components of a project, overall cost moving from here to here, and the variance is this. It's very high level information. Okay, now, I want to see what's this variance due to. This is one component of the project, okay? So you could expand and show within that project what all the things happen. Yeah. Then that's where the package management comes into play. So the several packages within a project or component of project, and the cost report is done like this. So each package is a contract, and you are administering the changes, what we discussed, change management, all the variations, everything is administered, and we eventually end up this report. Yeah, I'll just show the next one. There are 2 reports, and then we finish this. You see here we discussed about this, right? Fees, we discussed about this in package management. Fees, administration cost, enabling works, construction works, statutory authority fees, contingencies. Okay? That's within one project. So let's assume that I had looked at one component of the whole thing. With previous report, we saw the header. This is the detail. Yeah. So this is the overall detail. The fee has moved. Fee is what? All the money is payable to the consultants. Okay. Administration cost. We talked about site offices, computers, this, that, all that administrative expenditure for the project. Are we exceeding the time? Wait, only one more. And this is the detailed one. So within the fees, you can see this now. Within the fees, these are all the breakdowns. These are all the packages. Yeah, so this is the third level. So what we saw in the first slide is the first level, very high level. The second one was the identifying the fees, construction works, contingency, everything. This one identifies only the fees. So what? Project manager, architect, engineer, engineering consultant, interior design, peer review, structural third-party review, all that. So all these were consultancy contracts which they were awarded in that project. And what was the initial budget? What was the approved budget? What's the contract? Where it moved? What is the end? So tell me that if I have effectively managed a cost plan, arrived at a proper budget, and effectively done a packaging based on the procurement strategy, and then managed the change management properly, I will end up to this level. It's a very hard work, right from the beginning to the end. But you will see, you will taste the success. If you've done all that right, if you tick all the boxes right, you will end up with this. This is going to represent the outturn cost of the project with all the details. As a client, or as any party to the project who is accessing the cost, then click on the button, they can see all this. What else they need? And yet, we're talking, all this is administrative procedures. You need to effectively link this to your construction contract. If you're just dealing completely from the construction contract, you talk about some procedure, the contract will say, I don't follow this. It's not written in my contract. Contract says you will issue engineer's instruction, I will value. I don't care about this. So you have to have a procedure document attached to the contract, which will then effectively administer this. Thank you very much. I think I went overboard by half an hour, but it required